Marketing for the Now. I'm Andrea Sullivan, the CMO of VaynerX, and Gary Vaynerchuk is back from vacation. Gary, did you kick that sport card trading addiction yet?
Andrea, don't get us started here. I will literally take the next 2 hours.
You're so right. I shouldn't have brought that up. Okay.
Not.
Get that. We're back. You're back just in time for episode number 10. It is Back to School. Back to School is a big event for marketers, and surprisingly, estimates are that this year will break new sales records of over $100 billion, and it was $80 billion last year. And in this episode, we're going to be sharing a couple of findings from a study that we just fielded from VaynerMedia, where we had a chance to talk to Gen Z and their parents to learn a little bit more about how they're feeling. They're a bit anxious, they're a little bit worried, and we're going to be hearing from a bunch of speakers that are hopefully going to help us with all of that. So if you're interested in finding out more about the study, feel free to email us at marketingforthenow@gmail.com. We're also hoping that you can help us in flaming the conversations. We're going to have a lot of cool dialogue, #marketingforthenow, and check out any of our previous episodes at VaynerX.com. So with that, we're gonna jump right in to our first speaker because we've got an amazing lineup. Our first guest is Tom DeSanto. He's an extremely popular writer and producer known for some of the biggest movie blockbusters, including X-Men and Transformers. Tom will tell us more about how he is partnering with the CDC to challenge kids to wear a mask as they go back to school through the Heroes Wear Masks Challenge. And interestingly, according to our VaynerMedia Back to School study, this will hopefully help not only kids, but their moms, who we learned from our study are 2 times more fearful of their kids going back to school than their dads are. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you all very much. I feel like we are forming a real-life Justice League to save the kids instead of pretend. We're doing it for real, and hopefully we'll keep some kids from getting sick and bringing that home, and that's what we're all here for.
So, Tom, before we go into the back to school stuff, just for the audience, because I know a lot of individuals will be familiar with what you've been involved in, but maybe not necessarily you. So, just a little back to comic book fame, actually. What about a little 3 to 4 minutes on comic book #1, origin story? What kind of kid were you? Going over there just professionally, because I know a big percentage of the audience here from 18 to 81 years old have aspirations to do things similar to you. And I think we should spend 3-4 minutes on that, and then we'll get into some of the other stuff.
Got it. As Gary was a baseball card kid, like my brother Dan, I was a comic book kid. So first story I have is we were across the street at this little candy store in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and I was 3 years old. And my mom tells me I threw myself on the ground until she would buy me a Flash comic book. I couldn't even read, but I think I saw the images of the superheroes, and I knew that was my inner spirit animal. And then from there, I was, comic books, we lived in a 4-room apartment. We were 5 people. My dad was, a cop in New Jersey. We never, wanted for money or anything, but we weren't wealthy. And comic books allowed me and my imagination to leave that 4-room apartment and to go to different universes and to go save the planet. And when you're a little kid, I think one of the things you really want to do is make a difference on the planet, but you're small and you don't have that strength or that ability, and superheroes give you that aspirational thing. And look, if we were back in ancient Greece, we'd be teaching our kids about Hercules' arrogance and his hubris, and we would be telling them that, we need to do these labors in order to learn humility. And that's what comic books are when they're done right. These are our modern myths. And then that's why I think it spoke to me in that Joseph Campbell 101 way. And if anyone doesn't know Joseph Campbell, if you really want to understand the human ability and storytelling on why humanity was always asking the same questions around the planet through their myths, even though they had no interconnection with each other, it's a great way to take that college class on your own and go look up those interviews with Bill Moyers. It will give you a massive insight into the global audience. And what's in people's hearts. So for me as a comic book kid, I remember one day, I was also that kid rushing home from football practice to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, you nerded out, Tom. Let's get everybody to understand. You were nerding out.
I was nerding out, and I'm living proof that your action figures can become real and pay the mortgage many times over. And that's, for me, that's the true success in life. The one thing I would say is don't chase money. Money, if that is your only goal, you're always going to want more. You're never going to be happy. Don't chase success. Success, you're always going to want more, and it's the same thing. But when you do what you love and you can find success and find financial freedom in that, that's where you're truly a successful person.
Because you're enjoying it instead of what it can bring to you.
Yes.
I agree.
And that thing, your 80-year-old self is going to be very happy if you live that life.
What was your big break? Because a lot of people ask me about breaks and, or moments or just for another perspective, another story for the audience.
I think for me, it was, I was a kid. We moved from Elizabeth, New Jersey to this place called Island.
I know Island super. What years were you in Island?
I left Island in 1994.
Oh, perfect. So do you know the Clark, the Bradley Shopping Center in Clark, the Clark Circle?
Absolutely.
My dad's, my famous story of growing up in Jersey, and my dad was a stock boy in a liquor store, was in Clark Circle Liquor, Shoppers Discount Liquors, in that Bradley's Shopping Center.
I know exactly where that was at. They also had that video store on the corner.
That's right. That's exactly right. So that's literally that's where I grew up, is that general area, Edison, 15-minute drive away.
I went to high school in Edison. So
is that right? Which one?
Yeah. I went to Bishop Bar, which is now St. Thomas Aquinas again. So
Tom, my backyard in Edison was in Tingley Lane, and I used to play football with my friends on Bishop Bar's high school field from 1982 to 1988.
So that we literally were in that same, because
Tom, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just for everybody, because I know a lot of people watching from my world, Tom's high school was actually where I put one of my lemonade stands when I talk about my lemonades, literally that street of Tingley Lane.
Yep.
That's
and that
crazy.
Was that type of suburban area where, I probably bought lemonade. I'm sure I did, because it was that type of growing up. Wait
a minute. You graduated high school when?
86.
Got it. 86. Got it. And then you moved to 94. Yeah. Jesus Christ. That's crazy. Keep going.
Yeah. Super small world. And, for me, it was, I had that dream of making movies, but it's a dream. So I was working actually at JCPenney in Woodbridge Center. I was delivering pizzas. I was a caddy. My first job was washing dishes at Denny's in Avenel, New Jersey. Once you have a job like that, you appreciate any other job, because that is really, really hard work, and it's honest work. And then I started taking classes. I was going to school at Rutgers, and I started taking a screenwriting class at NYU at night. So I would hop on the train, I'd go in, and one of my teachers, who was working with Robert De Niro at the time, said I was much more of a USC writer than an NYU writer, meaning that I was much more of a pop culture writer than going to be doing Taxi Driver. So I took all of the money I had earned from that point, which was about $5,000. I went to a summer film program at USC, where I got to write and direct my own short film. And I made my teacher cry.
Wow.
After I saw the film. And that gave me the validation that, wow, I can do this. I can make someone take their shoes
in that moment, you could get somebody into your world.
Yes.
Tom, I apologize for jumping in. I always get yelled at for interrupting, but we have so few minutes left. And so I want to get to this point. Give us the context, because we are on this kind of back to school moment. You've gone headfirst into an initiative for back to school. Please explain that to the audience and give some context.
Great. So back in February, I was sort of seeing that the medical community was having some issues with messaging and struggling on that front. And I really thought of what Hollywood did during World War II. So I reached out to some friends I've had who've worked in the government going back to the Clinton administration. These are lifelong public service people. And I said, hey, is there anything we can do teaming up? And I called John Rogers, and he reached out to the CDC with the CDC Foundation. And we formed this partnership with Facts to Health. And our whole idea was, hey, let's create a hub for people, except instead of just being Hollywood, let's unlock the internet and the artists that is in everyone around the planet and their voices. And we're going to give you the hard science. Here's the data. Here are the facts. No politics, no anything. This is how we all stay healthy. This is how we all stay safe. And this is how we all keep as normal a life in a pandemic world as possible. Because there are countries that are killing it right now. Like Japan. Japan has 2.9% unemployment. They have 1,200 deaths. They have no economic shutdown. Because as a culture, since the Spanish influenza in 1918, they all wear masks whenever they're feeling sick. And now everyone has the potential to infect someone else. I don't wear my mask to protect myself. That protects me this much. I wear my mask to protect you, which protects you that much. And that is why we wear a mask. You're not doing it you're not appearing weak. You're appearing strong.
Tom, how difficult is it to overcome when something gets politicized, right? Because I think, you're sitting here and saying very nice thing. It's very easy to I'm very common sense over politicization as a human. So to me, I find myself on many sides of both arguments.
Yeah.
But do you feel like once something goes full tilt politicization, it becomes real hard?
It becomes real hard, but it's not impossible. And we can't
agree.
give up,
I agree. Yep.
That's why it's like, look, there is not a report of the daily death toll of doctors and nurses who die from wearing masks because they overheat.
And by the way, the good news is, because I have arguments with my friends, I find myself because I have personal views and I can sit in different sides on different things. I find myself having conversations with a lot of friends. The mask one's been easy lately with my couple friends that are trying to get their juices flowing on it with me because I think they love the debate more than even they have passion for it. And I said, no, but everybody's kind of succumbing to this one. This one's kind of this is the world is flat used to be a political debate.
Yeah.
This one's kind of,
totally.
I think we're on the other side of it. I'm razzing my buddies. I think we're on the other side of this one.
But we're not. The LA Times.
I'm aware.
Yeah. I wish we were. I wish I could,
You would agree with me though, in the last 30 days, we're appreciative of the momentum a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally. I think, when the president started embracing masks.
When you now start having to think about, wait a minute, my 9-year-old daughter is going to school, from the confines of our home, it can be politicized. When your 13-year-old is going to school and your 81-year-old mother is with you still at home, all of a sudden, you might decide to put your energy on a different political issue.
Totally. And look, those stories are out there. There was a story. Somebody went to a funeral a couple weeks ago, and they brought it home, and they ended up killing someone. There was a girl in her early 20s. She just wanted to go to a party. I get it. I would love us all to go back to being able to go have a beer and a movie and a ball game, but that's not the world we can intelligently live in right now. And history is watching us. And unless we handle this properly, they're going to go, wow, they really screwed that up. So the number one weapon we have is wearing a mask, washing hands, and physically distancing. Those are the 3 things we can do. Other than that, see, Rob is leading the way. Rob, you're going to be the Incredible Hulk in our Avengers here. So there we go. See? But honestly, it's the best way we can keep it together going back to school and give people as normal a life as possible is through this. There is no debate. If you have science that says this is not effective, go recheck your facts. Just look at other sources. Do not trust a Facebook post when you have thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of scientists and doctors and people who devote their lives to this saying this mask is going to help keep people safe. And, we're trying to prevent that story of that girl who went to that party and 4 days later she killed her grandfather.
Excuse me. I apologize. Andrea, I know you've got to bring in the next one before we get in trouble here. Tom, I could speak with you about Bishop R and Jersey and X-Men and masks all day. And I'd like to get connected offline. I really appreciate you being
Absolutely. On. And if people could just tag at factstohealth.org and
spell that out slowly because I know people miss it sometimes.
Yes, facts, FACTS, the number 2, and then health, HEALTH, .org, O-R-G. And then do a hashtag Heroes Wear Masks. Go to the website. It has all the information there. Gary and team, thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. We'll talk soon. Stay well.
You got it. Bye, buddy.
Thanks, Tom. We've got our masks right here. We're ready to go. We're superheroes. Our next guest is Rob Smith, the CEO and founder of the Phluid Project, a leader in the gender expansive movement, as well as a brand dedicated to the values and priorities of Gen Z. Phluid combines Rob's knowledge of retail, social justice, and LGBTQIA+ underrepresented youth. And it's interesting, our back to school study tells us that 63% of families are spending more than last year. And while clothes still top the list at 60% of respondents, there's nothing typical about this year's back to school card. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you. Good to be here. How you doing, Gary?
I'm doing well, Rob. I just, that stat just made me want to vomit all over myself, Rob. Any indication, Andrea, on that 63% predicated on people getting unlimited amounts of free dollars, which I'm on board with because it's a global pandemic. I just wish people didn't buy wine or sports cards or anything they didn't need. When I look at the macro trends, it's just disheartening. Like, this is supposed to help you eat and shelter. And we're watching people, listen, I'm all about the sports cards and the wine, and we've all got things, but that's if you can afford it. Watching a lot of individuals spend those dollars. Rob, any insight to that? Andrea, any insight to that?
Best Buy sold more big flat screen TVs in May than they did in December. People are taking their money and putting it in. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd how it's not making its way to the people that really need to put food in their pantry.
Well, Rob, there's also personal responsibility. This is where it kind of goes. This is why so many of these issues go both ways. You can't control what people do. You can set them up for, it's like it's very real. I mean, I'm just living like a real life, and I know people who should not be spending it on a flat screen who in 4 months, 9 months, a year, are just going to collect enormous amounts of debt.
Yep.
Take care of the issues that are rising. Saving money is not cool anymore, and it's devastating.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to side rail. Why don't we start with your origin story as well, real quick, and get right into the stuff that you're doing?
My origin story is interesting. At least I think it is. I worked for about 30 years. Well, first of all, my first job was interesting. It was cleaning up after the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Wow. That was my first job. Talk about glamour, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and then I ended up working for Macy's for 22 years. Worked my way up there, worked for Victoria's Secret, Levi's, Nike. I had a moment, I like to say I went to my first Burning Man and had the best experience. And there's a saying that you don't quit your job after your first Burning Man. Well, I came back and I lasted about 2 weeks and I just thought, this is just bullshit. I have to do something else with my life. So quit my job and backpacked around the world for 6 months. And on that journey, I came up with the Phluid Project, which is essentially the intersection of my profession, which is fashion and apparel, and my passion, which is social justice, specifically around LGBTQ youth. So put it together and literally opened up from the day that I wrote down after an ayahuasca experience, consider opening a gender-free, gender-neutral clothing store called Phluid. I opened the store 10 months later with my own money and ignited what was a movement. And and since then it's been 2.5 years of amazing is what I can say.
And so what's kind of the hot take? What's like, if you just wanted everybody to read a headline right now, what's on your mind with this?
What's on my mind is just Generation Z is so inspiring. That I built a company on values and on a mission statement that is mine, but it tends to resonate as much with Gen Z, if not more, because I care about social justice. I care about equality and I care about human rights. I care about the environment. And these are things that I care about. And it's also happens to be what Generation Z cares about. So what's pretty interesting, and what I've learned a lot, because I've done so many pitch decks, but I learned a lot of stats, and I won't overwhelm you with it, but the Phluid project at its core of who it's created for are transgender and gender nonconforming young adults, or adults, folks who can't shop anywhere because our entire world is binary. And once you start to understand that, every time you go anywhere, whether you go shopping or you go to a restroom or anywhere, it's divided into men and women. And if you're somewhere in the space in between, or if you're, transitioning, the world isn't friendly to you. And so I try to create a friendly space, but more than queer folks, more than transgender, gender nonconforming folks, it really appeals to Generation Z. Because Generation Z, if anybody has a young person in their life, over half of Gen Zers know someone who's gender nonconforming, who uses pronouns other than he, him, and she, her. So it's this movement that's happening that I like to say that, this generation is not this or that, these binary boxes, they're this and that they reject these ideas that you can't just lock me into this one thing or another. They're much more complex. And so
Rob,
the idea,
Rob, what is, I'm sorry, you just inspired me. I'm just very curious because of your expertise. This is a tough question, and it's not a tough question. I'm actually just genuinely curious. What has been the emerging vulnerability, or the thing that you are just like, ugh? Because I'm obsessed with this Gen Z generation. I'm just curious from your perspective, like, is there anything that is something you think about of because I spend so much time producing content to that environment. So I'm almost being selfish right now of can I bring some value from an expert? I want to hear your expertise, synthesize, and then maybe build on top of anything standing out early on. Cause we're hearing so much about the incredible aspects of Gen Z. It's a very aggressive conversation. I've been spending a lot of time trying to think about what can be an additive on something that's emerging as a potential vulnerability, at least from your perspective, because obviously we all have our own, but anything stand out? Because I'm genuinely curious.
I don't know if I'm going to answer your question, but I think I will. And this is through experience and through numbers. So over 80% of this generation is not defined by their gender. That gender is not defining who they are. They're super queer. Over half identify in the queer spectrum. In California, over a quarter identify on the gender fluid spectrum and gender identity. What's so interesting is when I created this, I was like, it's going to be amazing, and then for some people it was a mecca. This store was a mecca. For other people, their parents walked in this is amazing. And the kids gave a collective sigh, what's the big deal? And so this generation just they are so advanced, and I think that impressing them is really hard, and that you have to work really hard because they expect things that don't exist. They don't care about women's rights, how hard we fought, and gay rights and racial. They're starting to understand racial inequality, but it doesn't matter to them. They're so advanced as a generation, as a species. We just got to follow them.
Understood.
I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's how I see the world.
Honestly, it's just because you're so deep in it, and I've been so deep in it, and I get that. That's why I even said it's a little bit of a hard question. I'm trying to figure out, for example, it was very clear to me after years and years and years of spending 1 trillion hours listening that entitlement was a very big vulnerability for millennials. And by the way, these are massive generalizations. I know 8 trillion millennials that are not entitled. But as a theme, it was wow, right, this makes sense. We've been on so much positive growth in the macro, no war for so long. There's so much printed money, the internet, and so what I'm spending a lot of time right now on, and because I would go to those places with my content, and I'm even talking about the 3 people I care about in life, just one-on-one dinner conversations, I noticed there was a lot of value in that. What I'm trying to figure out is are there any emerging themes on the Gen Z side? Because your answer was another massive compliment to them. I'm empathetic to that. I am.
Yes.
What I'm genuinely curious about is if anybody, and you're at the forefront, and so it's awesome. We can go on to the next thing, but if you're asking me, that's where my mind is. It's what's emerging as a maybe something, because I view it as an opportunity to help, not you Gen Zers, you stink. You only care about technology. It's not a razz, it's an opportunity.
Yeah. I don't know if this will answer your question either, but I find them to be very complex because they're very, they're about themselves. They're Gen Me. You know, they are their brand. If you look at their Instagram, they're a brand and they brand themselves. They brand themselves on their values, what they stand for, but they care deeply about each other. You know, that you know, they care about each other. They care about racial inequality. They care about the environment, and so they're complex that way because they're a little bit like narcissistic in a way because they're very much about themselves, but they're also deeply compassionate and empathetic, and that's part of who their brand is.
I love that.
Yeah.
What didn't we get to in this rapid kind of 15 minutes that you would love the audience to know about what they're up to?
What I'd love the audience to know is I have been so fortunate to have immerse myself like into this space where every day when I had the store open, I was meeting with young people and talking to them. I started going to boardrooms and I started speaking to C-suites about the future of gender. And many of these adults in this room they were like, wow, like it kind of blew their mind. And anybody with a Gen Zer in their life, they're like, listen to this guy, he knows what he's talking about because my kids correct me about pronouns all the time. And, you know, so I break apart sexual orientation from gender identity, from gender expression, from your sex assigned at birth, break those into pieces. And then where do people fit in? So anyway, I just started educating, moving on past like including retail and fashion and consulting, and now helping train companies how to get ready for this gender expansive workforce called Get Phluid. And what I try to do is, you know, in a way, just letting people know that I always feel like Paul Revere saying this, you know, Gen Z's coming and ringing my bell. And, you know, these old guys sitting in a conference room I don't think they fully understand this generation's coming in and they have deep expectations. I don't think they're not going to mess around, and they expect a lot. And it's going to take a lot of education for folks to lean in to learn about who they are and what they expect. And I am trying to help out, especially in this space, because people think if they're like cool with lesbians and gays and they're fine, it's not as much about who you go to bed with. No, it's about who you go to bed as. And it's understanding identities and ripping apart dress code policies and ripping apart, you know, dressing Mr. or Ms. and starting to look at all of these things that are very subtle and nuanced that need to be recreated. So I'm getting excited about doing that as well.
I understand. Thanks for being on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Our next guest is Lisa McKnight. She's the SVP and Global Head of Barbie and Dolls at Mattel. Lisa leads a global team in brand strategy, product development, and marketing execution. In 2019, she expanded the Mattel doll portfolio with the launch of Creatable World, the first gender-inclusive doll line, which challenges the traditional views around who a doll is created for. And she may tell us a little bit about the Mattel Playroom. Our back-to-school study shares with us that parents, and especially moms, are at a breaking point in multiple emotional and mental aspects, and they're in need of more time-saving and better toolboxes. So we're hoping that we get some more ideas from Lisa. Welcome.
Great, thanks for having me.
Lisa, how are you?
Rob and I had some fun times together working on Creatable World. And like he said, he's been providing great counsel for companies, including Mattel. So good to see you, Rob.
Awesome. Lisa, let's just get right into the meat with you. Barbie's pivot during the pandemic, how would you describe it?
Well, you know, it's really interesting. Barbie's success is, and Barbie's at her best when she connects to culture. So we've been pivoting and doing things with Barbie that reflects what we're all doing, which is kind of interesting. You know, we've been working really hard to make sure that Barbie, the brand, the toy, our content is providing comfort for kids at home and providing valued entertainment for kids so parents can also catch a break. It's interesting. We've done some exciting work with first responders. We launched a Thank You Heroes program where when you buy a doll, we give a doll to Children of the First Responders Foundation, and those dolls are dolls that are role model dolls honoring a lot of these real heroes, whether they're doctors, nurses, firefighters, chefs, etc. So that's been an exciting program. You know, on social, Barbie's been wearing a mask and trying to, be relatable and a responsible role model. She's been trying out new skills and hobbies. She's participated in all the challenges that many of us have been doing on social. She's baking bread. She's doing the fashion pillow challenge. And then she's also talking to girls through our YouTube channel about how to make sense of this time and this new routine. And, again, providing entertainment, but also, I like to say, teachable moments as well for kids. So they know they're not alone in, how they're feeling right now.
What about purchasing trends? What are you seeing out there? I think, with the first two, we kind of went very high level and macro trends. Just to get a little nerdy for the people that are watching, a little under the data. Anything you can share around purchasing trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, happy to, Gary. It's been an interesting roller coaster ride, I'm sure, for many of us. At the beginning of the pandemic, doll sales were down. A lot of parents were choosing puzzles and games, family games, and
I'm sorry, I want to be a little business nerdy here. So you were thinking in your part of the woods, but the board games and games business unit were trying to figure out how to make more while you were trying to figure out how to get people to buy.
Exactly. So I was cheering on my buddies, that are leading those divisions, but I was also like, oh my God, what are we going to do with dolls? And Barbie? So that's what's fun about Mattel is, of course, we've got a portfolio of types of categories of products. But so in the beginning, parents were loading up on more family activities, if you will. And then a few months ago, they started leaning into more traditional toy categories like dolls, vehicles, we've got the Hot Wheels brand and so forth. And what we're seeing with dolls, which is exciting, is not only are our sales up dramatically, I have to share, across many aspects of the Barbie line, but also we're selling a ton of our dream house. And I think it's because it's a higher ticket item that's normally purchased around the holidays, but because kids aren't having birthday parties, families unfortunately aren't going to, theme parks and doing those types of trips, they need entertainment for their kids. And so items like our dream house we call it open-ended play. And they're really great for storytelling and imagination, and parents are leaning into those sorts of toys. So we're happy to see it, and we're happy to see Barbie rebound.
Anything that has come from social listening from the rebound? Like, you seeing anything from feedback from consumers around female empowerment, education, escapism, to your point, like anything from like a consumer response over the last 90 days that's fascinating to you?
Well, I will say that, certainly we've all been around, the systemic racism in this country and frankly in the world. And Barbie's always stood for female empowerment. But now we're appreciating that there are even more barriers for Black girls than just girls in general that are preventing them from realizing their dreams. So we are pivoting some of our girl empowerment programs to lean more into the Black community. Make sure that we're providing not only good role models for them, but that we're driving awareness for some of the issues that they're facing. And we're looking at fundraising programs. We're looking at featuring more Black lead characters in our content. So all girls see themselves through the brand. But that's been a definite, I would say, new emphasis on the work we've been doing based on social conversation.
Any historically, this is a little bit nerdy for me. Historically, is back to school a bump, a decline, because parents are scared that their kids are going to get excited about their new toy? What is historically back to school for dolls?
Yes, back to school is usually what we like to say. It's sort of the beginning of the holiday season. It's sort of pre-holiday. So it's when retail activity absolutely picks up. People are in store, obviously, to buy apparel,
Yeah.
wear, and school supplies, but we'll get the benefit of some impulse purchases. So it's the beginning of a buildup, which of course accelerates in the fourth quarter.
The Mattel Playroom, I've seen some stuff about it, but I don't have a lot of context. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm really proud of what we're doing at Mattel. Like I said earlier, we've got a portfolio of brands and we span across all these different categories of toys. And, as the pandemic really, kicked in, we found that there was a need to reinforce the importance of play and to let parents know that that's not something you should feel guilty about. It's a good thing. It creates normalcy for your kids. And we wanted to give parents a hub, which we're calling the Mattel Playroom, which is sort of a one-stop shop toolbox of activities and entertainment and content and stuff they can do with their kids to keep them engaged and to keep them stimulated during this time.
Now I'm going I apologize to the audience in advance. I'm going very selfish. Lisa, I'm a hardcore collector, flipper, yard sailor, garage sailor. Right now I'm obsessed with sports cards. I think they're the top 5% is the next contemporary art. I have a whole thing brewing on that. But
Awesome.
one of the great finds of my life, garage sailing, was it was a townwide garage sale, and this individual house let people go into their home. They were like fully moving, and like it was an estate sale. And like the thrill, the hunt is the whole game. And I mean, I can literally feel it right now. I open a drawer, like in a bedroom, and there are like 4 early 1960s Barbies, and I lost my mind, and I got them for a great price, and it was super, super fun. What is the secondary market, the collectability aspect? What kind of impact does that have on the brand when you are part of a brand that does have collectability and secondary market dynamics? If you were to make a limited run with one of your retail partners and then 5 minutes later it's 3 times the price on eBay, like what is that dynamic that a lot of brands don't deal with that I'm sure you do?
Yeah, we are so honored to have such passionate fans and collectors. And this is a brand that spans 6 decades. So there's a lot of people that have grown up with Barbie, as well as new fans. We do a million different things. I mean, we love connecting with our collectors at an annual collector convention. We always create unique dolls for that special group. We love auctioning off one-of-a-kind dolls at various events. And we love, like you said, bringing back repros of fan favorites. We had a lot of fun reproducing the original Barbie last year when it was her 60th anniversary. We've got a couple big anniversaries for the brand coming up next year. I'm not going to spoil that, but more repros of those dolls coming. And it's fun. It's fun to see the memories that we're creating, the nostalgia that's unlocked. We like to view Barbie as a blank canvas for self-expression. And I think a lot of people identify with that.
What did you have to do a lot of homework on history coming into this brand or when you entered it?
Yeah, I mean, what's amazing about Mattel is we do have a lot of people that have been at the company for 20 plus years. And I'm one of them. We've got a lot of designers that have been with the company for over 20 years. So there is a good sense of continuity and knowledge, but absolutely certainly don't know everything. And we've got archivists. We've got a ton of books that have been published about the brand. And so I am actually always learning something new. Speaking about the Black community, we're learning more and more about some amazing Black designers that worked on the brand years ago. And actually this year is the 30th anniversary of the first Black Barbie. And that's really interesting to point to, as well as think about what that was like at that time and, how progressive Barbie actually was and has been throughout the years.
I love it. Thank you so much for the insights, Lisa.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thanks, Lisa. Next up, we've got Brian Kenny. Brian is the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Harvard Business School. Brian is in charge of marketing for Harvard Business School globally, including the MBA program, executive education, online external relations, and Harvard Business School publishing. And Brian produces an exciting podcast for Harvard Business School called Cold Call. Our back to school study highlighted that parents believe academic performance is more important now than ever. 56% of parents stated that they felt getting good grades is more important than it was before COVID. And that number was just at 9% last year. So pretty big shift. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. That's a great introduction. You have a great intro voice.
She sure does. Brian, real pleasure. Brian, so, I mean, for you, the first place I go is like, ooh, huh? You know, it just feels, you know, like.
Do I look like that? Wait a second. Do I look exhausted?
You actually look so good. I'm like, am I overstating how much of a challenge I think this must have been over the last 12 weeks? I mean, you know, for me and my businesses, it was upfront. Clients not paying, you know, like it was like so hardcore. For you, it was within a semester, you know, but to think about when the realization was, our September or August might be challenged here, whether that was April or May or June, you know, just a very, you know, I think almost everybody watching, because we do have a very diverse audience and I'm always trying to find angles and use the last person or this and that, but I almost think for everybody, we'd all be curious on how much of a challenge this has been. And then obviously your institution was one of the first to say we're going virtual, and you know it's got one of the most iconic brands in the world that you're in charge of, and I'm sure there was some interesting feedback and backlash on like, wait, you got to pay that much for virtual? So like just a lot. I mean, an open-ended first 5 minutes of like, how are you doing and what's going on?
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride, and you know, people use the word unprecedented, and I feel like it's becoming trivialized because we use it a lot. But really, this is unprecedented, I think. And you know, Harvard is obviously just one of. I mean, every higher ed institution is going through the same set of challenges that we've gone through. Everybody's finding the best way for them to deal with it. At Harvard Business School, we had been committed, really going back to last spring after commencement. Our dean made it clear we want to bring our students back on campus in September. We need to find a way to do that. And the whole school has mobilized around that vision and that challenge. And I think, you know, now we're with the thick of it, right? We started to have students come back last week. We get the lion's share back next week. And we already started classes this week. So we'll learn a lot in the next few weeks about how well prepared we were and what we maybe didn't think about in that process. It's amazing, you know, if you think about a college campus, it's like a small town. And so everybody in their own town, their own city, wherever they live is seeing how administrators deal with all of the pieces, the moving parts that need to be thought about in a situation like this. You know, we have a residential community on our campus. They have to be fed. We have to make sure that our facilities are able to support them. But our primary goal here is to do this in a way that's safe for everybody that's coming back, because the last thing we want to do is have them come back and face a situation where we have to shut down. Some of that's within our control. Much of it is not. You know, The city of Boston, we have 200,000 college students coming back to all the different universities. And it's everybody's collective responsibility to do what they need to do to allow all the schools to keep operating. We've seen this play out badly in some other places already over the last few weeks, and we've seen places reverse course. We hope that's not the case here. But
even you know what's challenging about this? I'm sorry to interject.
No, that's right.
I've been thinking about this a ton. Even if you crush it up front and really cross your T's and I's, you know, I've had this rule, and I was very affected by the passing of Len Bias, the basketball player in Maryland, from a drug overdose, because it was a prime, you know, as a kid, it was just like.
I remember it well. He was going to be a Celtic.
That's absolutely correct. Very tragic. And it was a drug overdose. And I remember just feeling, even as a child, I guess I had this that ended up being my career, this feeling like everything changed after that. And I think a lot about this right now. I've always called it the Len Bias rule in my mind of like, when a moment happens, how does everything change? And I was thinking about, you were just talking, I'm like, man, if they and every other university in this incredible college town of Boston do everything right, history looks at it, unbelievable, the greatest T's and I's of all time, there's still the possibility of a single college student dying, God forbid, and it just gets everyone's emotions on tilt, and that's it. It's just like, you know, to me, I feel like everybody that's going back to school is in play. I have kids in private school in Manhattan, and I'm laughing is the word I would use, of like how everybody thinks this is going to happen. The second a single child under the age of 15 in the private school ecosystem in Manhattan has something of any scare, let alone something devastating, they're all shutting down.
Yeah. It's interesting. The parallel that came to mind as you were talking about that, and I think you're absolutely right, is automated driving, right? So we've got, this push towards, self-driving vehicles, and you have one incident where somebody gets killed. That's already happened a couple of times, and Tesla has had to face that. And then, the pushback against automation in all forms. So there's that.
Meanwhile, the data is far greater than letting us do it ourselves. And it's the same old, it's emotion over math.
But I think what happens, and brands, this is an important, thing for CMOs to think about, is how do brands respond when those kinds of challenges face you? And, so how will Harvard Business School respond if we have to reverse course and go back and shut things down again? And we've talked a lot about that. And, we would want to do so in a way that's very consistent with the mission of the school. We're not going to stop teaching. We might change the modality for how we're doing it, but we have to make sure that we continue to deliver on that promise that we made to our students to the best of our ability in the current situation.
And Brian, do you feel like there's, I've historically had my own points of view on college and different things and structure, and really more on an individual basis, because there's no right or wrong to anything. It's individuality. But, so much of the HBS, I interact with hundreds of HBS individuals over the last 10 years where they just talk about enormity around the serendipity of who was in their class, all that. Like, how much pushback and challenge are you getting from the individuals writing these nice sized checks for that experience, that if they have to go and do it in their own apartment, feel like they might be missing all of the, for a lot of people, the added value is the value. I'm sure that's been a challenge, right?
Yeah, it's very true. A huge part of the graduate school experience, especially at a place like Harvard, is that network that you build, those social relationships that you develop. That's a big reason why people come there. And, we've got 1,500 students coming back. We normally have 1,800 MBA students. So only a few hundred have opted to not be on campus. And some of them just because they can't get visas or whatever, they can't get there. It's not their decision. They would probably be there if they could. So I think they recognize the importance of this moment, which is if they can come back and follow the rules that we put in place, the safe and healthy procedures, if they can avoid large gatherings, if they can do those things, they can get a lot of the effect that you're talking about, Gary. They can still develop those connections. It'll just be done in a different way.
By the way, but you know what's funny, Brian? I was just sitting here. One could argue maybe even better.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. So this is almost like a trench-like experience, right? They're in the trenches together. They're dealing with this at this very unique moment in history, and I think they sense the momentousness of that. So I'm really optimistic about how our students are going to respond to this, just based on the early signals that we're getting from the students that are already on campus.
Talk to me about Cold Call. I want to take this opportunity to make sure a lot of people that are watching find a new podcast they fall in love with. I'm funny. I don't consume a lot of content in the world. I consume people consuming content. So I spend all my time trying to understand what's happening. And so it's really weird. I always tread lightly when I talk about things that are actual shows or podcasts, because almost all of my opinions of it are formed by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other people's opinions through their commentary, because I spend almost all my time anthropology, social listening. There's such an incredible vibe towards your podcast. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
And you're taking, I always judge the judger. This is really what I do. So I'm excited to deliver that for you. And I hope it carries some weight, but more importantly, how would you describe it? And why should people maybe consider to add it to their repertoire?
Yeah, thank you for giving me a chance to talk about it. So Cold Call is actually about to have its 5th birthday in September. We're really psyched about that. 130 episodes, every 2 weeks without fail over the past 5 years. And basically, Harvard Business School teaches by the case method. That's what we're known for. So our faculty write business cases, and that's what we teach in the classroom. And so Cold Call is really turning the tables on the faculty member, because the way they start a class is they'll walk in and say, Gary, start the case for us. And if you haven't read that case, that's a terrible moment in your life that you'll remember forever. And that's the one thread that ties all of our generations of alumni together, is that Cold Call. So the name is really a wink and a nod to our alumni, but the discussion is tell us, Mr. Faculty, why did you write this case? What's between the lines? What motivates you to do it? What are the big takeaways that people listening can get from this case? It's a 20-minute sort of business lesson. And, people, I think, connect to it because our cases are highly relevant to the current day, the current business practices, and our faculty are passionate about what they do. So to hear them talk about it really humanizes them in a way that humanizes the brand. And that's why we came up with the concept in the first place. We wanted the people to see how relatable our faculty were and how relevant the research they do is in the world.
You feel like it humanized them because when we all, like, the brand is so powerful that for too many, like for 99%, at some level, or 90%, there's an unapproachable, seems just above, there's a lot of people that have self-esteem issues and feel like I can't hang in that world. Do you think it thawed out some of those aspects of the brand?
I really hope it does, because our faculty, I think, for a long time, mystique was the thing that worked for Harvard Business School, and that's just not the case today. We have to be transparent. We have to have our authentic voice come through, and our faculty are the best example, and our students too. We feature our students in our social media all the time because we want people to see that they're not arrogant and they're not elitist and they're not a lot of the negative connotations that people have about the brand. The only way to do that, the best way to do it, is to bring their voices right to the surface, and Cold Call helps us do that.
Right, just a random thing that you're just inspiring me by this talk. What's the most interesting thing you've learned about yourself during COVID? Is there anything that pops to mind?
I think, probably consistent with what you'd hear from a lot of people is it's made me stretch muscles that I didn't know I had.
And which ones of those muscles do you like or are surprised that you're good at?
I would say I was concerned about keeping my team motivated. So my team is still remote. We're going to continue to be remote probably till January, maybe beyond.
At least, yeah.
And I think the challenge that leaders face across the board is, how do you keep people feeling connected when they're dispersed? How do you help them feel, excited about what they're doing day in and day out? Even I felt unmotivated. I would wake up on a Monday morning and say, "Oh my God, what day is it?" And you can get into this malaise. And I think I've learned that there are things that I can do to help people feel connected, and a lot of that is just sort of blocking and tackling, hand to hand, one-to-one, interaction with the people who you lead, with your team, picking up the phone, calling them. That kind of stuff really goes a long way. It's just that individual recognition. And you have to make time for it, and you have to put an emphasis on it. And so I think I've been able to do that pretty well. I feel like my team is still fully engaged and excited, and there's no shortage of stuff for us to do. We're working as hard as we ever have, and our work is really important to the school. So I always remind them of that.
I appreciate it. We appreciate having you on.
Hey, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it, Gary.
We'll talk soon, Brian.
Thanks.
My team on Marketing for Now, I wanted to take 2 minutes. Brian just packed us with so much, and I knew I had 2 minutes. I want to give a shout out to a lot of the people over the weeks and weeks and weeks of Marketing for the Now that have been engaging on Twitter. And I want to just give a couple of shout outs right now, like Skylar R. and Jose Magic and M. McCants and George and Shane Bennett. Just an incredible community. And just so everybody knows how I'm running this show, I am basically on Twitter looking at the hashtag Marketing for the Now, and I'm watching you take screenshots and quote these incredible individuals. I see a lot of you following. If you don't follow VaynerMedia's Twitter handle, so you're getting their handles and you're repeating, you're as much a part of the content of this show as I am, Andrea and Summer and Amy and all the work they do, and then obviously the ridiculous lineup of incredible guests we have. So just wanted to take a little public service announcement to say thank you for everybody who's engaging, and to encourage many more to engage. Lerone Gordon, I've seen you all the time as well. It's just really, really, really great. Sally Rogers, thank you so much. And so Ali Malik, so let's keep it going. Thanks again, Brian. Let's keep the show going. Andrea?
Our next guest is Grace Nolan, Samsung's VP of Integrated Marketing for their Home Entertainment Division. Grace oversees consumer, retail, and trade marketing across the television, audio, and consumer IT businesses. She leads the way in cultivating foundational partnerships for the US TV business with Xbox, Netflix, and ESPN, and instilled a brand mission to lead through service to gamers, streamers, and sports fans in pursuit of their passions. And according to our Back to School study, 75% of Gen Z responders are saying that they influence their parents' purchasing habits, and particularly in tech. Grace, I'm hoping you can share a little bit more about that.
I would like to. Hi.
Hi, Grace. How are you? By the way,
I'm great. How are you all?
Good. On the record, I know our survey says 75%. I, Gary Vaynerchuk, believe it's 100%. It is fascinating to watch kids' voices in homes compared to 30, 40 years ago. Grace, great to have you. I hope you and your family are well. There was something when I was, the team does an incredible job for me prepping for these, but I'm 100% improv. But out of respect, because I'm like, man, they put in so much work. I started feeling, I took this vacation and I'm like, how can I be better? I'm like, I feel a little guilt that the team puts in so much work, hours and hours for these things. And then I come on and just wing it. And so I decided to glance. I've gone from nothing to a glance. And in that glance, I saw that Samsung's talking a lot about adding boundaries, families adding boundaries. Add boundaries during this time, transforming their homes. I thought that was super fascinating and couldn't wait to get to you and hear what that meant and what you're seeing. So let's start there.
Okay, so first of all, I think it's awesome that you don't listen to your team and you go off on the rails, because I'm the same way, and it's amazing. It's very liberating. So I'm with you.
Thank you. And by the way, on the record, that has nothing to do with my team. That is my own personal shortcomings. I think it's your strength, but my shortcomings. So my teams, and I'm sure your teams are legit, but go ahead, fire away.
100% no. My team is all smarter than me, but whatever. Anyway, so let's talk about boundaries. It's really COVID has brought so many insights to our team. You don't realize in a typical day how many rooms and environments that you go through, right? So imagine you wake up in your room, you travel through your house to get out the door, you go to the gym, and then you go, grab a coffee, and you go to work, or your kids go to school, and that night you might go to dinner at a restaurant. And basically COVID happened and all those rooms and environments went away. Every single one of them, right? No more movie theaters, no more anything. And then you were home in the same house with your family 24 hours a day. And people really started, we're as animals, humans adapt. And we started pivoting and really leaning towards technology. And our screens had a huge role in that. So they started looking to us for entertainment, for learning, for fitness, for all of those things to take the place of movie theaters and your office and your classroom. And it was really cool because I feel like when you talk about technology, people get so tied up in features, and that's not why we exist, right? This to us was not just a business opportunity, but it was a call to service, a reminder of our purpose to create technology to help people. And we came to task, man. We had probably the coolest thing that we launched was the outdoor TV, which wasn't supposed to launch for months later. And we were people are canceling their vacations. They're no longer getting on planes and going to Spain or going to, they're not even going to the shore because who knows what the Airbnb situation is going to be, right? So how do we create that experience in your backyard? How do you start entertaining people in open spaces? And we escalated and advanced the launch of this product so that we could create an additional room in your space. But we did that with the content in our TVs. We did that with new TVs coming out with our lifestyle brand. It's just been a tremendously challenging time, but very cool, right? This is why we exist.
Totally understand. I'm just going to get to the thing that's super on my mind. What was that thing that Ryan Reynolds did with the mid-roll? Can you help me here? I don't have all the context, but it seemed super interesting, and he's always super clever. So just to educate the audience on what happened and me myself on that matter.
Yeah, no, it was cool. That was probably one of our more fun projects. What a talented guy. So we were working with Netflix last year. We have a ton of really great partners, and we were sponsoring the launch of their new movie 6 Underground, which featured Ryan Reynolds. And we were thinking as a team, we've been working with Adam and Eve, our creative agency, and we were brainstorming what can we do with Ryan that could elevate our interactions with this younger audience. And honestly, he's as A-list as it gets, right? I can't afford him. So we're like, what if we did something with aviation gin? We brought him on, we pitched an idea, he didn't respond, we're like, it's dead. And then he came back all of a sudden and was like, oh, this is kind of funny, but why don't we change it to do this? And honestly, it was the fastest I think we've ever moved. And we move at the speed of technology. Like, we're fast. Everything we do is fast. But we turned around everything probably within a week. So finalizing scripts, getting all the approvals, all the way, it's like with a gin company. So this had to go like all the way up to our CEO and our risk people and everybody. And we had to produce it, shoot it, and ship it out. And it was just awesome. And what a fun team. So yeah, we got it out. We got over 1 million, interactions, likes, comments on Twitter within probably a day.
Wow.
So
just a lot of
it was very cool.
Let's go back to the back
cool.
to school theme. Where is Samsung seeing its kind of intersection with education, like purchasing trends? What are you seeing? Like what kind of insights can you give us in the audience?
Yeah. So here's the thing. COVID hit, and when situations like a global pandemic, because we've all been through like 7 or 8 of them, when they happen, people just start holding on to their wallets, right? They get nervous. And we were completely setting ourselves up for some slowness, for some, softness within our business. And all of a sudden we started seeing the category grow, and it was growing and growing faster. And then it's honestly, to date, it's been growing in the pretty impressive double digits for a flat category. It was a surprise. But the reason was because, again, the boundaries, the rooms, people were having their kids from college come back, and they needed another screen for the second bedroom or the third bedroom. They needed a new screen because they were trying to learn from their virtual classroom. And teachers don't present off of PowerPoints, right? Like, it's not like they have a beautiful, 20 font screen for the kids to look at on their mobile devices. They're writing, and you cannot make out a thing. And so they're casting onto bigger screens. Students are casting onto bigger screens, and parents who are trying to balance their own work with what their kids were doing were also buying an extra screen so that they could keep an eye out on what it is that their kid was watching while they were trying to work. So, I mean, it's everybody's changed. Everything has changed. And everything that they're doing right now is to make things work. We all thought that this was going to be temporary, and now we're settling in for another round of it in the fall. So what are the ways that technology brands and brands in general can help parents? That's the only consistent question that we're asking ourselves. What else can we do beyond hardware? There are things that we can do with UI, right? So we have free content, we have content for kids, we have child protected, features, so that sometimes you're using the TV as a babysitter and they're not being set free.
I mean, the iPad and the television have become an incredible babysitter for many.
Yeah, but how can you curate that experience with your TV to be not just Paw Patrol 24 hours a day, which is what my kids would do?
Let's talk
right?
about that. So let's talk about connected everything. I think something that that Samsung has done extremely well is that, Internet of Things, connectivity across the board, because that will allow you to curate better. Thoughts on that and kind of the advancements you've been making in that universe?
Yeah, so we've been doing this connected home thing for years.
Yep.
I think what we're trying to do is take it way past incremental to completely change the role of the TV. So what we've been seeing in years past is like, okay, I can connect my watch to my phone. I can maybe connect that experience to my TV and connect, some of the content that we're seeing, within the screen so that it's a little bit easier to aggregate. We're kind of doing it all. So it's all going to just blow up. The incremental little lines are going to go away, and then everything is going to be connected. So, we talk about, changing the role of TVs, right? So it's not just about finding a show to watch on Friday night. Now it's about saying what your preference is for how you're going to spend your Friday night. So maybe you're going to be working out. Maybe you're going to be meditating. Maybe you're going to be watching a movie or binging a series. And the TV, our universal guide, now offers all of that, right? So it offers various genres of content, various levels of interactivity with the content. It's no longer just a one-way, you taking a show, absorbing the show, eating popcorn, and then turning it off and going, right? Now you can do things with the TV, and imagine you can do even more in the future, and that's really our vision. But, you know, one of the things that we do is to take that experience and elevate the ease with which you're consuming that content, right? So, you know, when you think about going to the movies, it's not just the movie itself that's great or bad, that makes you have a good or bad experience, right? So it's how good the movie is, how comfortable your seat was in the theater, you know, whether the sound and the quality of the visual experience was good, getting to the theater, whether there was traffic, and the decision on which movie to pick before you got to the theater. Like, all of those things impact the quality of your date night, right, at the end of that night. So Samsung is saying, like, forget all that stuff. Let's just make everything easier. Let's give you a kick-ass screen with an amazing audio setting. Let's give you an aggregator, a universal guide that says, okay, we know you like these things. Let me aggregate your content across the entire universe of content. So it's not just, it's like Netflix on steroids, right? So Netflix will take all their content and say, hey, you like this type of content, go watch this. Samsung TVs will take the content across OTT, broadcast, the world of content, including our own free channels, and say, hey, go watch this tonight. And we're going to do it on a kick-ass screen. And we're going to take all the decision-making away, and we're going to just give you a great experience. So there's that piece of connectivity. And then I think probably the other really interesting piece, and I think
I apologize. Grace, I apologize.
Yeah.
I want to get this in, and we're going to run out of time because this is by far the most interesting.
Sorry.
No, sorry, nothing. I'm sorry. But I got to get this in because I think it's going to bring a ton of value, and I think it's a really cool thing to talk about. You are a dynamo, and I'm sure everybody's seeing it. I'm reading the comments. You've got a lot of things going on, and you are going through all of this with 3 children at home. I think it'd just be fun, back to like me trying to always find a fun potpourri of like different things that might bring value. Talk about, on a personal level, like, you know, how you're navigating this with 3, what are the ages? Like, what's been the dynamics? What's been the highlight? What's been the low light? And what's been the scalable or workable system? And what's been the most privileged aspect of it? And what's been the most challenging aspect?
So, okay. I'm so glad
if you don't mind,
giving me an excuse to talk about my kids.
Good.
I love my kids.
Okay, good.
I mean, everybody loves their kids.
You know what? I wasn't sure if I wanted to go. I didn't know if I wanted to go here, but I was like, you know what? This will help so many people, and I just was feeding off your energy. I'm like, fuck it, she's gonna go there.
Yeah, I'll go there. I mean, my kids are awesome. We did this little promo, and they were like, "We're gonna be famous." Like, oh, you're gonna be so famous. Gary Vee is legit. But so my kids, I have 3 kids. I have 2 boys, 7 and 5. My 5-year-old just graduated from pre-K yesterday, so woo! And then I have a 2-year-old little girl. And like, honestly, I think I'm a really grateful person in general. So COVID happened, and we're like, oh my God, we got so lucky. And the reason we got so lucky is because we had just moved, and we're like, oh, good thing we got into this house before COVID. And I was traveling a ton for work, and I was like, wow, I get to not miss all these really cool things happening in my kids' lives. And also, I have an amazing husband, right? Like Brian Dolan, kudos. Like, I'm lucky to have that infrastructure, and I'm lucky to have a support network with my family. Like, I know that those are all points of privilege. And I'm every day just grateful that we're all surviving together. But yeah, it's a balancing act, right? Like, my kids, they will come into meetings and be like, I don't like that. Like, in a creative review with an agency, you'd be like, okay, that's enough, guys. Like, that's really cute. Go away. And we're making it work, but we're doing it the same way everyone is doing it. There's nothing special. It's just we're grateful to have those moments.
What's been the funniest thing?
The funniest thing?
Mm-hmm. Like, the 5-year-old like poop on you while you were on a Zoom with executives? Like, literally the funniest thing. What is the funniest thing?
Oh, there's a couple things. There have been meetings that have been walked in on pantless. And with little kids, pantless also oftentimes mean underwearless.
That's right.
So there were a couple of those occasions. Really loud fighting in the background, or funny jokes, fart jokes. There was a comment about dynamic flatulence in a meeting that was a total joke, and you could hear, like, it's just, there's a lot of it. It's constant. It's fun though. And it's cool to work for a company where everybody's just kind of like, that's just what's happening. It's cool. Yeah.
Thank you for your incredible energy, Grace.
Thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Awesome. Andrea?
All right.
Thanks, Grace. Our next guest is Stephen Wolfe Pereira, the CEO and co-founder of Encantos. Encantos is on a mission to become the most impactful entertainment-driven ed tech company in the world, a direct-to-learning company. And it's well on its way, having received several industry awards. And parents from our back to school study are looking for tools so they don't fall behind in a virtual learning world, with 60% of them stating that they're worried about the lack of extra help from teachers. So hoping, Stephen, to hear a little bit more about Encantos, and maybe we'll even get to see your kids like we did during the briefing. Welcome.
You never know. Thanks for having me. What's up, Gary?
Stephen, it's such a pleasure to have you, brother. How are you?
What's up, mi hermano? It's so great to see you, man. Just thank you for all the positivity that you put out in the world. We need more Gary V now more than ever. So
thank you, bro.
Thank you for all the stuff.
Give this audience, obviously, I just, full disclosure, I've been an enormous fan of this human being, who he is as a human and who he's been as an executive in different companies along our careers. And when he took this entrepreneurial, plunge, I just was so proud of him. And then, of course, like always, because I watched him navigate his corporate career, his timing was impeccable. It's, the world has shifted into an environment that it needs this more than ever. Please tell everybody what it is so they can become educated about it, because I think this is going to have a nice little impact for the business.
Thanks, brother. So we are at this moment where 9 out of 10 kids around the planet are stuck at home. And we could have never predicted it would take a pandemic to kind of kick education in the ass, Gary, so that they get the wake-up call that you need to not just have physical learning, but combine it with digital. It really is about blended learning. So we are building the most important, impactful, and beloved entertainment-driven ed tech company on the planet. So think of it as direct-to-consumer, or what we call direct-to-learner brands. And it has a subscription model, but it's one part entertainment. So building world-class brands with stories and diverse characters at the core. It's one part education, where we focus on 21st century skills, the learning, literacy, and life skills that are critical in this AI era that you're not going to get in school. And we use a blended learning approach, both digital and physical products. And then one part technology. We're actually building a data platform that is going to help bring personalization to learning. So the same way that Amazon personalizes e-commerce or Google personalizes advertising, we are going to be personalizing learning.
I love that. How's it been going? Like, how's it been going? Like, what's like, has it just been, is it one of those things where it happens so fast? Because you're still a young company.
Yeah.
I was thinking about I really, really, really helped my dad's business recently with Wine Text. Mm-hmm. And we had almost 9 months of building it. And that business has been around for 40 years, 20 years in its current formation. And it was able to take advantage of the moment. I was thinking, man, it would really I wonder if the businesses that were completely built for this moment, but they were still so young that they were only 61% ready for the moment. Yeah. From the outside, I would feel like that's potentially what you went through. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, because I think that's a learning experience for many people listening.
Absolutely. I mean, look, you're all about real talk, so let's keep it real. We are a young company. We were founded in 2016, and it was really kind of this, kind of a little bit of a side hustle as we were trying to test and learn and see if we could actually do this model. Really a way to own our audience, go direct to the consumer, to kids and families, because we focus on kids 12 and under, because once you get into high school, that's a whole nother jam. So it's really, the first teacher is the parent. And we thought that we could really figure out a way to go direct. And we started with our first brand, which is our flagship brand called Canticos. It is the #1 bilingual preschool brand. So think kids, 5 and under, getting kindergarten ready. And we've been slowly but surely building it. And we always were preparing to launch our first subscription app, but it was being actually planned for the fall for Hispanic Heritage Month. And COVID hits, and it was just like, oh my God, we have to accelerate everything by like 6 months. So thankfully we were in the process, but let's be clear, we are a startup, we are a small, nimble team. I mean, we punch well above our weight. We just, got nominated as Business Insider as one of the top, kind of hot startups of 2020. But absolutely, we had to not, pivot. It was more, we had to accelerate everything that we were doing digital to rise to the, occasion and really meet this moment.
I love that. What's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself during this pandemic, Steve?
I would say the most important thing is that I do not need to be on a plane every freaking week. So, you and I both spend
we
so
see
much
we
of
see
our
each
time.
other more randomly at an airport than
Yes.
a scheduled meeting. It's like, hey,
And look, I love what Grace had to say. I mean, she works with, my dear friend and former client, Wanda Young, who's the CMO of Samsung, who also has, kind of now teenage kids, but Grace with 3 kids. I have 2. I have a 5-year-old, Sebastian, who's going into virtual kindergarten. And we could talk about what that's like. And I have a 2.5-year-old. So the fact that I have been able to be at home and really run this startup virtually with our distributed team, and actually not just that, but confidentially, we have been, kind of taking in more capital because it's been opportunistic. So many people have been reaching out because of this moment. I mean, think about it. People are looking for kids content. Every streamer needs it. Everyone all of a sudden got, kind of on the ed tech train because everyone wants to invest in this because they see that homeschooling is going to triple over the next 18 months. And then, oh yeah, this little thing called Black Lives Matter happened. And we are all about diversity, equality, inclusion. So we have really been trying to kind of meet this moment. And, we've been able to raise capital and launch our app, and, we're trying to do the best that we can.
what about, the diversity aspect of it? It's so powerful what you're doing. Like, what do you, has there been an outpouring of like, thank you for being so, because to me, I hate that so many things have become political. To me, it's just context. Like, take it, like, let's not even go into places where people have to get their feelings hurt. Like, what about just context? It's nice when you're being like, I only want programs and ads and information that talk about garage sailing and sports cards and root beer and the New York Jets and being an immigrant. And, like we all love context. How much of a factor has that been for you, Stephen?
Yeah. Well, first off, now that I'm working out of my startup studio / garage, I found my 86 and 87 Donruss and, Fleer baseball cards. So I see you on
We
LinkedIn,
need to talk offline. I promised
need to
Andrea that I promised her that I wouldn't ruin marketing for the now with my sports card coma that I'm in right now. So talk to me about the context.
Yeah, I would say, this is where you step back and look, you and I have spoken about this at length. Everyone talks about the data, but very few people act on the data. And having come from kind of the brand world, as a CMO for 3 different companies, different tech companies, we all know that we are living in a multicultural nation. And you live it and breathe it, you talk about it, but so few people actually do that. And I think I just got tired, after working in corporate for over 25 years. It was just like, look, I turned 47 in June. I've got little kids. I want them to grow up and see themselves. And today, in 2020, over 50% of kids in America are diverse. Approximately 30% are Hispanic. And so you don't see yourself in any type of either kids entertainment or education. So we thought that this was a great opportunity to create something that would be culturally authentic, but that has universal appeal. Again, Black Panther wasn't just for Black people, right? Coco wasn't just for Mexicans. So if we create, the #1 bilingual preschool brand, which by the way, Emmy nominated, has won consecutive Kids Screen Awards for Best Digital Preschool Series, beating out Sesame Street 2 years in a row. This is appealing to way more than just Latinos, right? Everyone is realizing, hey, I want my kid to be smart and learn another language, because 85% of brain development happens from 0 to 5.
What do you see as future state? You've always been great at kind of like projecting chess moves. What do you see as future state for the business?
Well, what I'm really excited about is a couple of things. And again, I actively follow and track all the things that you're talking about. But one, I feel that if you do not understand how to have a subscription business, you're not going to be in business. And everything about our business, there's one call to action: subscribe, right? So we're going to be kind of revealing more and more of our strategy over time. But by having a direct to consumer or direct to learner brand, we're going to build a portfolio of family brands and think of the ability to kind of subscribe to all of them in a lot of different tiers and membership packages, but really kind of reinventing the Scholastic book club model. We have books, we have apps, we have content, we have subscription boxes, we have consumer products and licensing. All that will be delivered via subscription. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, which I'm really excited about, and part of the sense of urgency, we just want to get our brands out there as quick as possible, is because this fall is going to be the launch of the first 5G iPhone. Mm-hmm. And this is going to set off the next decade worth
of innovation, 100%.
And I don't think people realize
listen,
what is going to happen.
People weren't realizing it was starting to, I was starting to get loud in October, November, December, January, February, and then obviously 5G has become wildly secondary, thirdary, fourthary, fifthary, sixthary for all of us. But to your point, it is going to be a massive game changer for folks. This does not mean your iPhone is going to be faster. This is technology that will enable things like self-driving vehicles and other dynamics, the connectivity of information at a speed that will allow for innovation that is just remarkable, including what, by the way, Stephen, including one that could compete with or that you jump on, which is a human talking to you, you having ear pods and the information being translated, which will then debate the, not the need, but will change the dynamics of language learning. Like, I honestly can't wait to just wear my normal whatevers, go wherever and have a conversation with somebody because it's being translated because of the speed and the catch.
Absolutely. But again, this is where you look at the spectrum. I mean, I love that you said that. There's a really famous, kind of parable in the technology industry, which is people tend to overestimate technology in the short term, but they underestimate its impact in the long term. So to your point, 5G is going to kick off the next decade of innovation. It's not going to be in the next maybe 12, maybe even 18 months, right? But understanding that 5G is going to allow low energy emitting sensors to be in everything from a traffic light to your fridge to your car, and it could last for a decade, right? Crazy. You're going to have everything emitting data. That is going to kick off the Internet of Things. Once you have all this data, it is going to field a revolution in machine learning, because you are going to have artificial intelligence grow exponentially as it starts to learn. And anyone that does not have first-party data to understand how to make predictive analytics to improve a customer experience, the ones that have it will look magical, and the ones that don't will look dumb. And then when you have 4K video that can be downloaded in a second, just imagine the impact on AR in the first 5 years and then VR in the last 5. And think about how that's going to transform every industry. But from our vantage point, the intersection of entertainment and education, it will be transformative.
Yeah, and for everybody, because we're nerding out here a little bit, but I think you'll enjoy this. How you look back, and this is for everybody, even the youngsters here on my team behind the scenes that I can see, and then all the people that are watching. Like, how you look at like a VHS, like VCR, or even a pager you once had, or even the phones you had pre-iPhone, and they just feel so archaic. Every single thing you're dealing with right now with your smartphone and your smart TVs, everything in your house is going to feel real ugly and slow in a decade, compounded by what these things are going to be able to do. Stephen, final things that we didn't touch on that you wanted to get across, and maybe a word of advice for parents from your perspective, one man's point of view, as we head into back to school.
Yeah, I would say it really is about understanding how are you setting yourself for this new world of homeschooling, right? This is not going to be a flash in the pan. I think people are truly underestimating how long this is going to be. I mean, first off, Scott Galloway is talking about the impact on higher ed, how anywhere between 25 to 40% of universities will go bankrupt, right? And so this is going to be transformative. And I think people are going to understand that we're going to move to, the whole unbundling that you've seen in media and cable. You're going to see the unbundling in education. And we're actually going to start to see the value of certifications and really talking about the future of work. But when you think about, K to 8, where we focus on, this is really going to be about what are going to be the trusted brands that you're going to bring into your home to truly enrich and supplement your kids' learning. And it can't just be digital. It has to be blended learning. You can only be on the screen for so much. And then you also want to reinforce it with physical learning, right? So I feel like understanding how you're getting ready for the long haul of homeschooling.
I love it. I love you all the time, brother.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for everything that you do, man. We love you, Gary.
Talk to you soon.
Later, brother.
So excited to have Tabitha Brown join us next. Tabitha satisfies the hunger of millions with her unique approach to veganism and her wholesome comedic personality. She's a North Carolina-born actress in Will and Grace and Switched at Birth, and she's a vegan lifestyle personality, mother and wife with over 3 million followers across platforms. 1 million of those she acquired in 30 days on TikTok, earning her the coined title of America's Mom. Welcome, Tabitha.
I think we started a minute early and I don't see Tabitha on screen. Do you, team? Okay, this is a huge opportunity for me to talk about sports cards. So real quick, while we wait for Tabitha, the top 3 to 5% of sports cards, the highly collectible, not the junk in Steven's garage that I also have, but the hard to get stuff is about to become the Andy Warhol and Jackson Pollock stuff. Get very educated, 20 hours. But now for a much better education, Tabitha's here. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks,
How are you?
Tabitha.
There. I'm great. How are you?
I'm too well. Tell the audience, for those that don't know you, a little bit about who you are and the brand and the amazing supernova that is you.
Well, hello there. I am Tabitha Brown. I'm an actress. I'm what people call a vegan foodie, an influencer that I'm still trying to get used to that title, right? But most importantly, I'm a wife and I'm a mother. And I am a real woman out in the world, balancing it all.
I love that.
Who I am.
Take me even further back, Tabitha. Like, what kind of child were you? Like, when do you remember yourself? What were your interests? How did you navigate? And what were some of the key moments that you think gave you the foundation to have, let's call it what it is, the conviction and the confidence to be a real woman in today's world?
Well, you know what? As a kid, I was very much so free, right? I had a huge imagination. I learned very early on that I knew I wanted to entertain and be on TV. I was probably about 5 or 6. We used to watch the Cosby Show every Thursday night as a family together, right? And I remember I told my mama, I said, I want to be Rudy's friend that ring the doorbell next and come right? And she thought I meant I want to, be friends with Rudy. I said, no, I only want to do it on the TV and then I want to come home. I was trying to express to her I wanted to be an actor. I just didn't know what that was called. I'm from a little small town in North Carolina. There is no actors or anything like that. And so after that, she got me in theater, in my church. And I started doing theater at school. And I would perform anytime I could, honey, at the cookouts, when the family cookouts, I got my joke book. My daddy always had a joke book for me. And I would just always love to entertain. I love how it felt. And then
you loved the reactions, the positive reinforcement, the attention, the energy.
Yeah, I love to make people feel something. That's what I was drawn to. I was like, ooh,
do you like that on a one-to-one basis as much as you like it on a one-to-many basis, or one or the other more?
I love making people feel like it's just me and you, right? If you ever look at my content, I always hold my phone very close to my face. And I do that intentionally because I want people to think I'm your friend in this moment. Mm-hmm. It's just me and you, right? No matter if I'm talking to millions of people. Right now, you're my only interest. And that's how I like to make people feel. Because everybody needs that sometimes. And so it was that feeling that always stuck with me. But then, as I grew as a woman, I was not always free. I found myself, being from the South and also working in like corporate America and people telling you, tone your accent down a little bit. It's a little ignorant or, we don't want to hear that. You need to be as neutral as possible. And then coming to LA and getting into the acting industry, it was the same thing. No one wants to hear the accent unless it's, a character requested type of thing, right? And so after that, I kind of got into this whole trying to please everybody. And that's not freedom. And so I was lost for a little while. I wore my hair.
You were on defense.
Right. I was trying to figure the thing out. I was like, let me give the people what they want. Cause this is what I'm hoping for. So I would wear my hair one way cause I was told to. I would cover my accent cause I was told to. I would always be trying to be a certain size.
By the way, that sounds like the greatest talent of all. I'm always fascinated by people that are able to do accents or suppress them. Like sometimes, I always tell people, I'm like, the only thing I'm good at is being me, and the only thing. It's all I got.
It's a great thing to just be able to be you. Let me tell you that. And I had to really go through a time. I got really sick, right? And during that time being sick is when I found myself again. And I realized a lot of times I always tell people, I think I may have even gotten sick because the true me couldn't breathe. I was suffocating myself. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think clear. And it took me 1.5 years to come out of that. Depression, sickness, anxiety, everything. I had to come out of that dark space. And when I found the light and I found my true self again, I said, I ain't never going to let go of it. I want to always choose light. But most importantly, I'm going to always choose me because I'm enough, just as I am. And that is how I arrived to where I am now. I just decided, you know what? God created me to be exactly who I am, and she is enough. And this is who I'm going to be. And the moment I did that, my whole life started to change. My whole entire life started to change.
It's funny. I put out, your name first hit my radar because I read all my comments and my DMs, or a whole lot of them by comparison to any other human that I know. And, I just remember, the name popping up like, oh, you need to check out this incredible woman, or you remind me of if they knew you first. And so I feel like there's a certain, I have a very interesting question for you. I am competitive. I'm a man. I really like competition. I grew up in Jersey. I grew up with nothing. I'm chippy, from that stuff. I was a poor student. I wasn't good at sports, so I didn't have a lot of positive affirmation for anything other than me grinding and working hard. I'm completely not I'm foreign to entitlement. I love accountability. But that also has created confusion when I'm giving out love, because I'm giving out a whole lot of fuckload of love on a daily basis. Yeah. Curious, because you're giving out a whole lot of love. And I think this is important. I think it was important for some people that are my fans watching this right now to hear that. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to make a connection. In your communication of love and really giving it, where do you see people sometimes confused because of the way you deliver it, or who you are, or how you do it? Like a lot of my friends and family, even like Andrea, like in our business world, like they get upset for me when people try to paint me as a bad guy because of my cursing or my aggressiveness, and I always tell them, like, look, I understand. Like if they just catch me saying fuck this, or I get, or and listen, this is not the golden era of white males either, so there's that. Like I understand. I have compassion.
Yeah.
But I'm curious because I've dug a little bit, and so I'm very happy that Vayner's reached out and trying to do some work with you and doing some work with you now. Like, when do you feel like you're misunderstood, even though I feel like you're trying to push out love in a real way too?
The thing that not necessarily bothers me, but always blows my mind is when people say, there's no way you can be that happy all the time, right?
Yes.
Not real, right? And I'll say, but nobody said there's no way she could be depressed. There's no way she can be sad. No, nobody said that when I was going through. But now that I choose joy because I got through everything I went through, you want to attack me because I'm happy?
Tabitha, you know what's crazy about that? People go to me, they're like, Gary, God, I get so much of that. People think I'm on drugs and shit. It's stupid. And people are like, Gary, I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to keep it real. And I reply to them, you're trying to keep it real cynical.
Like, who you trying? What is real though? Right?
Real? You don't know me. You have no clue. Keeping it real for what? You're keeping it real that you're exposing yourself as not happy, and you're being cynical to me because that happiness is making you feel uncomfortable.
Right, and that's what it is. I'm
aware.
Every day I always remind myself, I'm not the problem, right? And so whenever somebody does do that, we have to always just know it ain't got nothing to do with us, honey. It's what they got going on.
Darling, it goes even further than that for me. Honestly, it's converted into me feeling compassion and sympathy for them.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. People are going to be people to the day we die. Ain't nothing you can do about people, honey. They're going to be who they are. My intention every day is to do good. It's to put out good, to be intentional with loving people, right? But always remaining true to myself. Because I ain't ever going to lose myself in the process again.
Well, that's right. People are like, Gary, you talk about kindness, but then people walk all over you. I'm like, nobody's ever walked all over me in my entire life. I'm like, and then I get deep with people. I'm like, sometimes you're letting people walk all over you because you don't have good, you have expectations. You're going to let them do this, but what you really have in mind is something else. It's like people like hit me up, Gary, I'm such a fan of your work. I'm going to pick you up at the airport and drive you to your hotel. I'm like, no, you're not. You're going to pick me up and try to pick my brain the whole time. Right. And honestly, I'm tired after a 9-hour flight and need to catch up with my family. I love you, but you're not coming to drive me and just stay quiet. You've got agenda. And that's okay. By the way, I'm flattered. I'm not mad, but Tabitha, I think that's right. I don't think people understand that there are some humans, like, world, please use the energy of us right now. Like, I'm sorry to get on this little rant, but we have to start having this conversation. There are people. My mother is one of them. She passed that DNA on to me. This beautiful woman is one as well. Some people's actual happiness comes from making other people happy. It's how we fucking breathe.
It's a natural thing for us.
We don't know anything else.
Yeah, I just, listen, if you've ever went through depression and anxiety, it ain't no fun, right? I know that life. It is no fun. And if I came out of it, I made a promise to myself, I'm always going to choose light and try to be that for somebody else. Even if it's 1 minute a day, I want to do that. But that's what I do to keep myself sane, to keep myself healthy. I choose light for myself. And I am smiling. And I'm cuter when I smile.
How could parents watching right now choose light when they find out the sad news that their school is not opening anymore, and on some real shit, they're ready to strangle their little ones, even though they love them more than breathing? How does one choose light in the face of adversity or shocking disappointment?
We still are here to go through it, right? Because it could have went a whole nother way, right? We have the unfortunate truth that there have been elementary schools and high schools gunned down, right? Children didn't come home. This is a time of reflection. The world got put on hold. In reality, 2020 has, I just told somebody this yesterday, if 2020 ain't do nothing else, it made everything clear. What is important? So in the moment that, now I ain't saying that you can't have a meltdown and be like, Lord Jesus, because honey, I ain't been to nobody school to be no teacher, and here, yet I am trying to homeschool, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can have a real moment. But on the other side of that, ask yourself, now, why am I really this frustrated? Am I frustrated at being a parent? Because we chose to have these kids. They're a gift, right? We're frustrated at the situation that we were not prepared for. And that's okay. Now let's just figure out where our crack of light is. Because it might just be a crack. It may not be a whole sunshine yet. But focus on the crack and take it one day at a time.
Tabitha, in that framework, where do you sit with judgment of yourself?
I try not to be hard on myself because I did that for a long time. It got me nowhere, right?
Because I'm listening to you talk, and it was always kind of clear for me from the little I knew, and I couldn't wait for this.
Yeah.
I think we share some stuff.
Well, good.
And I think judgment on oneself is foundational to be able to pull off the shit that we're talking about. And that's why I asked you that.
Right? You gotta, this is the thing. You have to be easier on yourself, but you have to be willing to check yourself too.
Yeah, you have to be accountable, but kind.
Have to be yourself accountable, right? You don't have to be judgmental to yourself because we all doing the best we can every day. There's no blueprint to life. Honey, you just get here and you be like, oh, somebody help you out for about 18 years and then you on your own, really. Okay, and then you're trying to figure it out day by day. And sometimes you do great at it, and sometimes you fall flat on your face. But even if you fall flat on your face, as my dad always say, you were still moving forward. So get up, Dust yourself off and let's figure it out. But don't be hard on yourself because that ain't going to get you nowhere. Just take your time and try to figure it out.
What's the biggest challenge you still have as you self-audit? What are you currently attacking, trying to get better at, and comma, you're excited because you're seeing a little bit of movement? For me, it's radical candor. I hate conflicts. It's so funny. I'm such a tough guy on stage and I curse at it, but one-on-one, I really struggle. I just want positivity and like, I'll figure it out and I'll do it at my expense. And it's taken me time as a human to build on radical candor. And I continue to try to get better at candor. What about for you?
It's two things for me. One is time management, because now I have a whole slew of things happening that were not there before. And for me, foundation is everything, which is my family. They come first for me, right? And trying to make sure I balance it all. That is a thing I'm literally working on every single day, trying to make sure that I can balance it and not lose myself in the process, but balance it. The second thing is making sure that people understand, because I'm nice, don't mean I'm weak. I'm trying to really, people mistake your kindness for weakness. And I'm sure
I literally swear on every ounce of my soul, I think kindness is the ultimate strength.
It is. It is.
Kindness is foundational. I laugh at what people think is strong. I'm like, that's weakness. It's a facade of strong. It's weak on the inside. Kindness is maybe your perception of weakness with actual fucking steel as foundation.
Absolutely. Honey, to be able to reserve yourself, right? When everything is coming at you, but yet you stand still and you're not affected in the moment. Honey, that is the strength of 1,000 tons, okay? Because being angry is easy and quick. Everybody can jump to being angry and quick.
Super easy.
There's work going on in here. I hope the sound is not going crazy.
The sound is delicious. Keep going. I love chaos.
But it's a thing of trying to make sure that people know that just because I'm happy, just because I'm nice, just because I'm smiling, does not mean I'm weak. I'm very sharp, okay, and very strong.
I'm far from confused, honey. Thank you for being on.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Talk soon.
All right. Bye.
Thank you, Tabitha. Wow. All right, we're going to bring it home now. Up next is Natalie Nixon Phd, and she's the president and creative strategist for Figure Eight Thinking and the author of The Creativity Leap. Natalie is now going to teach all of us how to go back to school and deploying creativity to change up the rhythm of our lives for the better. And this is important according to the study that we just did around back to school, because 66% of our respondents replied that their routines have become even more important during COVID-19, and they seek ways to change them up now more than ever. Natalie will bring her interesting background in anthropology, fashion, higher education, and creative consulting in her teaching. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much. Hey, Andrea. Hey, Gary.
Natalie, it's such a pleasure. Thanks for closing us out. There's so much I want to get to, so I want to go a little more rapid fire on the closeout. Talk to me about your journey, because it's a cool one. I think it might inspire some people, because I do think COVID is challenging people to think about if they want to make a change in the journey. And I think yours is really, really fun to think about.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. I have an incredibly loopy background. I have a background, as Andrea mentioned, in anthropology and fashion, but I think my loopy path is because of the grace of advice from my parents. I had a first world problem when I was 19 years old, sophomore year in college. I had to declare a major, and I wanted to make sure I got a good JOB at the end of a very expensive education. And I called home in tears, and I was very apologetic about everything that was boring and that sounded impressive. And they said, well, what are you interested in? And I began to apologetically explain about anthropology and Africana studies. And at the same time, this is in the 80s. This is in the days when there was a phone in the kitchen, right? And a phone in their bedroom. And at the same time, they said, that's what you should study. And I said, really? And they were like, yeah, that's what you should study. And my dad said, Natalie, if you study what you love, you will have to turn down opportunities. And it was like this load lifted off my shoulders. And so I have never had a 5-year plan. I have literally, when I hit a crossroads where that nudge is like, I'm not excited about this work anymore, I'm not passionate about it, I have to check myself. I heard you and Tabitha reference that earlier. And I have to do some really deep work to follow my heart. And it's ultimately in our life, following our heart is more efficient, but it's really hard also, but it's totally worth it. So I think right now, in this time of COVID, it's what I've been calling the value of the pause. And it's an incredible opportunity to reorient and reroute. And it's both terrifying and exhilarating. I posted something recently that if you're 50% terrified and 50% exhilarated, then leap, because the terror anchors you and the exhilaration is what keeps you buoyant and optimistic. And I mean,
does that tie into the book, The Creative Leap, or is there something different there?
Thank you for asking. So yeah, the Creativity Leap is about why and how creativity is this essential competency for right now in this fourth industrial revolution, as well as for the future of work. I got so tired of hearing people say, "Oh, I'm not a creative type," as if it was a certain special tribe of people. To be human is to be hardwired to be creative. And I define creativity as toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems. So you're hearing this theme in me of, I have a very hybrid background. I like the juxtaposition and the counterpoint between, at a crossroads, following your heart and doing what's practical, wonder and rigor, exhilaration and terror. In my life and in my world, the gray happens. The gray is reality. It's black and white is not a reality, but it's navigating the ambiguity and getting more comfortable with it. And creativity thrives in ambiguity and mess. And we've got a lot of mess right now. So that's why I'm really passionate about leaving people with a playbook, a roadmap for exercising creativity, whether you're an attorney, environmentalist, a plumber, a stay-at-home parent. It's essential right now.
Let's talk about the living classroom.
Yeah.
What is your hot take, perspective, expertise on? I mean, we really wanted to close with you because I thought there'd be a lot of practicality in this. So I'm excited to hear myself. So what do you got for us on that?
So are you referring to the actual organization Living Classroom, or what a lot of people are going towards in the fall?
Honestly, both. I was going to segue, but since you set it up that way, I was going to reply to where you were going to go with it. So
sure.
Let's go with both.
Okay. So just for context, my husband and I we've been doing little short trips on weekends here and there. And this past weekend, we're in Philly. We drove down to Baltimore and enjoyed the Inner Harbor, enjoyed some seafood. And we're walking along and I see this really cool, it looks like an Outward Bound type of wilderness course. It's called the Living Classroom. And I looked it up. It's a foundation, and they seem to be really cool because they seem to be embedded in different parts of Baltimore's African-American community, especially for kids who are underserved. But what I loved about it is that their whole model is learning by doing. And that is something, there was a chapter of my career, I was a professor for 16 years. One of the reasons why I exited higher education was I wasn't convinced anymore that we were doing it the right way. The lack of practicality, the lack of learning by doing, right? The lack of the constant stage
the great passion of my life, Natalie. I went the other way, right? My mix made me very poor at school, but man, I was really struggling because I was living a life where I was like, I have so much admiration for my friends that are doing this, but why are they 29 and can't do anything?
Right.
They can speak to everything.
Right.
And of course it's a mix, but it's interesting to see that your path went the other way.
Yes. My path went the other way, and I always had exposure to the practicality. For example, my mom taught us how to sew when I was 8 years old.
So you had other aspects of your life where you were seeing it, and so in that juxtaposition.
Oh yeah, I grew up in a proletariat blue collar community in Philly. You know, on my block, there were cops and nurses. My dad was pharmaceutical sales. We were kind of bourgeoisie aspirational.
Of that crew.
Exactly. So I appreciate and understand the value of knowing how. And I think right now we're seeing a swing back to learning by doing. I've been predicting for a while that we're going to see a return to an apprenticeship model.
Me too.
Not the kind of apprentices of the medieval times, but you know, our kids, the centennials, are really questioning the ROI of higher ed.
Natalie, on my entire soul, as a parent, if my 11-year-old daughter wanted to do X, she sat down, because eventually she'll be old enough, but and there was to me, who are the 11 people in the world that are doing it the way you admire it the most? And I'd rather pay that individual for my daughter to get as close to the sun, as I call it. I would much rather pay that person, you know, and you can't say that, you know, you have to be very careful when you deliver that sentence, because there's an entire movement, and I respect this movement as well, of like, let's not take advantage of people with internships and this and that. And I'm sitting here saying, forget internships. I'm willing to pay people because I believe so much in what you're saying.
Well, listen, check it out. Why did my parents sacrifice so much so that my sister and I could get this outstanding education in a very wonderful liberal arts institution?
To advance your life and happiness. That was the path, and where you're going is there might be an alternative path now.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct. And part of it was to access a social network that, quite frankly, the way our society is structured, I would not be able to access as easily.
By the way, Natalie, I'm sorry, because you're just so fucking sharp and bright. It's like it's my bad habits of cutting off come in when I'm invigorated. You know what I've been thinking a ton about?
What?
With virtual, back to social networks, mixing with people. I mean, this COVID thing and us getting used to doing things remote, it is going to shift so much.
Yes.
I actually, people talk about it lightweight. Where are people going to live? Where are people going to move? I think it's real. Like, I'm very practical, and I'm doing things like, I used to fly to London, for my office in a meeting, and I would kill myself. 6 a.m. flight, meeting, 6 a.m., but I had to, quote unquote, be there. Now, I still have to be there, but I might go for a week. And I might go to Paris for I grew up in the wine business. I haven't been, those wineries want me to come all the time. Wait a minute, I can do my entire 2 days in New York virtually from France,
right?
And maybe show my kids, like, the whole game's got a potential of changing.
Absolutely. And it's really helping us to rewire and redesign our relationship with time. It's helping us to pause and to really identify what really matters. I think for those, let's face it, there's going to be casualties in learning.
Yes.
And I'm much more interested in the future of learning during this time, because not every kid has parents who'll be able to be accessible and help them through this time of learning. Some
people live in places where they don't even have computers or internet or Wi-Fi. All the things that people just take for granted that they
take for granted. So I think that the value of this time is to reevaluate rituals that we have, assumptions we have about what it means to learn, about what's required for success. Even as a university professor, I was never convinced that every undergrad in front of me actually should be there.
Right.
And secondly, higher education is not necessarily the ticket for a happy, successful life at all, right? So then it requires us to revisit, for me, what does it mean to be human, and what's our real added value? It's creativity. And anything that advances the ball, to use a sports metaphor, for us to up our creativity quotient, to up what it means to be creative, whether you're an entrepreneur, a techie, a farmer, whatever, do that. And learning just rote things to pass a test is not necessarily going to be that. So I am passionate about helping people at this moment in this time to navigate complexity with complexity. And creativity is this cool, complex system that's toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems.
I love that. What what's like 2 or 3 bullet points that parents, students, executive, like what have we not touched on that's on top of your brilliant mind that might be able to help people with some hot takes that they could dig into a little bit more after this?
Well, I do want to build maybe a little bit more just on this point about this is an opportunity to redesign our relationship with time and to figure out new rituals. One of the things that's actually a truth is that we always have the opportunity to redesign our relationship with time. And now it's just in front of us, and we're going through what we call a Groundhog Day every day. So that might be creating better boundaries between you and your clients. I've been advising and encouraging organizations to create those boundaries by tiptoeing into it and saying, maybe on Tuesdays, we only do Zoom meetings between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. But we need that counterpoint of rest, getting lost, wander, so we can recharge and reorient the neural synapses of our brains. And a practical takeaway is to become a clumsy student of something right now. So while I studied dance since age 4, I'm now a clumsy student of ballroom. So I study tango and the foxtrot and salsa. I just posted a very clumsy video of me doing salsa the other night. And here's what happens when we are clumsy students. Number 1, you have to have a tremendous sense of humor about yourself.
Yes.
Secondly,
humility.
Say it again.
Humility.
Tremendous humility. You don't know it all.
It leads to so much happiness.
Yes, it does.
Gosh, please, can we make humility cool? If we can make humility cool, people would be so much happier and would learn so much more. Oh my God, so much more.
We must lead with humility when we're clumsy students. We've got to be curious. We've got to ask better and different questions. We've got to be better at improvising. So I've become a clumsy student of the tango and foxtrot and also of pickling vegetables right now. But all of that transfers over into our work, and it's really important to do.
You've been amazing. I would love, please hit me up. I'd love to chat some more with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to my incredible team at VaynerMedia, Andrea, who is the fearless leader of the bunch, our incredible guests, and most of all, and I mean this, the audience that is listening and giving up their precious time, that is enjoying and advancing. And Andrea, thank you so much once again. And of course, obviously to, Georgie and Amy and Summer and just the whole crew. And Natalie, thanks so much again. This was an incredible episode. Andrea, you want to jump in and take us home?
Thank you, Gary. We love you. We'll be back on Tuesday next week on September 1st from 2 to 4 Eastern time for the next episode of Marketing on the Now. And it's going to be a special one. It's going to be all about esports and gaming. So you're going to hear from Activision Blizzard Esports, Anheuser-Busch, Chipotle, Gamers Vote, Method Gaming Limited, Sentinels Gaming, St. Jude's Children's Hospital, and Twitch. So please come and check it out. September 1st, 2 to 4, register right when you're done. Also, if you want to check out any of our previous episodes, go to VaynerX.com and keep the conversation going. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.